Welcome back to Beyond the Spot, where we are decolonizing healing one brain at a time. I am your host, Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, and I'm excited to welcome you to 2026. In this episode, we are working around the topic staying regulated in a dysregulated world. Why calm is not the goal, capacity is. It is my pleasure to be here with you all, and we are off to a fresh start, not only because it's a new year, but it's also a new day, a new moment. We need to tell the truth at the top of this episode. If the world feels dysregulated, it's because it is. This episode is not about mastering calm in the middle of chaos. Absolutely not. It is about releasing the lie that regulation means quiet or even still. How about pleasant or contained? We've heard all manner of descriptives of what regulation means. We're going to dispel some of that today. Many of you are not failing at nervous system work. Let me say that again for the people in back of the room. You are not failing at nervous system work. Your bodies are responding accurately to ongoing threat, instability, loss, injustice, and speed. So today, we're talking about capacity, not calm. We're talking about regulation that does not require denial. We're coming from a place about staying present in a world that keeps asking us to disconnect. That's what we're talking about today. So, welcome to this episode. It is my honor to have you present with me and all my parts and sharing in this moment. And I want you to hold this throughout this episode. Staying regulated in a dysregulated world. Why calm is not the goal, capacity actually is. And if I can offer you this, I should say you, they, and them. So 2025 was very interesting and different and monumental for me. With that being said, I am a noticer. I am a watcher. Okay. With that being said, I have been noticing the collective nervous system of community, of my nation, and even globally. And so when I talk about the collective nervous system, we experience together. And I think that's one of my appreciations for my mentor's beautiful work when it comes to um, the neuro experiential piece, the work that David has been doing for some time. So as I'm noticing human to human, we're all being impacted. And the thing becomes oftentimes people don't notice what's happening. Let me put it this way. People usually focus on what they see. It's not uncommon for human beings to think about what impacts them, whether they see it ocularly or whether they feel it somatically in their system. And so this goes back to the idea of resonance. And so collectively, In an individualistic society, we're all being impacted one way or the other. And the fact of the matter is, what impacts you, they, and them impacts me and all of us. Dr. King said, um, when anyone in community is impacted, we're all impacted. And I'm paraphrasing, but I believe that. And I want to invite you to begin to notice that. And when it, comes to this ideological construct that we have created in the spoken and the unspoken, as we speak about regulation, just be mindful. Doesn't necessarily have to look on your person as it might look on someone else. So I want us to spend some time around this because it's easy for us to judge ourselves based on what we notice, what we see, and even what people tell us, oftentimes in error. So welcome back to this episode. I am absolutely excited that you are here. And thank you. I am Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, your host. Beyond the Spot, Decolonizing Healing One Brain at a Time, is a podcast that weaves, my first love, of course, brain spotting, and somatic informed modalities with embodied healing, cultural consciousness, and real talk about trauma, resilience, and recovery. Hosted by Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, a licensed professional counselor, spiritual healer, and the first Black female brain spotting trainer in the world. Each episode dares to dismantle mental health myths, uplift lived experiences, and restore collective wisdom. One conversation at a time. Beyond the Spot podcast is for educational purposes and is not therapy. Please reach out to licensed medical and mental health professionals. Thank you. A great place to start this week's episode is when regulation gets misdefined. That's pretty important because somewhere along the way, regulation became synonymous with being unbothered, being even toned, being productive. And how about being fine? But regulation was never about appearing settled. It's actually about having enough internal support to stay in the moment. Some would even say it as having enough neural space, coming from a neurobiological perspective. A regulated nervous system can include anger, which has been pathologized. And y'all know I'm a believer. Even in the Word of God, it speaks about Jesus's anger. Okay? And so, even when I talk about regulated nervous system, I just want to highlight some of the things that it can include. So there's anger, there's grief, there's alertness, mobilization even, and even boundary setting. When we talk about the word calm, it is a state. Capacity in and of itself is a relationship with your internal world, your sense of self. And if I may extend a reflective invitation, notice where you've judged yourself for not being calm. And ask instead, do I have enough support to stay present right now? Yeah. It's important for me to segue into the myth of self-regulation. Western psychology has overemphasized self-regulation and undertold the truth about co-regulation. We were never meant to regulate alone. Isolation is not neutral to the nervous system. It can be highly destabilizing. When systems are unsafe, self-regulation becomes a burden. Let's try some of these on for size. May we? May I? How about this notion, and I quote, I should be able to manage this? How many times have you said that to yourself? Or how about, why can't I calm down? And here's the big one. How many of us have asked ourselves, for real, what's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Your nervous system is responding to context, not pathology. Now, y'all know I'm a brain spotting trainer, unapologetically. Brain spotting has been my trauma responsive skill and tool at the root. It is baseline for me of all things I have scaffolded beyond and even inside of brain spotting. So, even through a brain spotting lens, when we try to down regulate too quickly, we often bypass adaptive activation. Sometimes the work is staying with activation and not necessarily fixing it. But let me say this about brain spotting: fixing anything is not the goal. Brain spotting is about the journey, about the neuro experiential capacity inherent in the modality of brain spotting. It's actually about the process, y'all. It's not ever about the destination. So, for any of you brain spotting trained brain spotters, lose that idea that you got to get to zero, because that is not the goal of brain spotting. It is all about the process and the neuro experiential of brain spotting. And so I just want to give a reflective offering here, an invitation. Where have you tried to regulate yourself out of an environment that actually requires protection or change? Now, BIPOC folks, I want you to really sit with this one. And do not be remiss by the macro topic. Just putting it out there. In fact, let me widen that, right? Let's talk about people that live on the periphery. Let's talk about the marginalized groups, the oppressed groups. And then let's consider and ponder and sit with this. Where have you tried to regulate yourself out of an environment that actually requires protection or change? Real talk. Because I'm all about inclusion. We don't get into othering here. So, appropriate activation is not dysregulation, y'all. Anger does not automatically mean dysregulation. Neither does urgency. Neither does mobilization, especially when we start looking at the defensive survival system that we all possess. Sometimes activation is the body simply saying, even somatically, pay attention. Something matters. Something isn't quite safe. Something must change. Pathologizing activation teaches the body not to trust itself. Regulation does not mean suppressing energy. It means knowing what the energy is and what is the purpose, what is it for. Small intervention, invitation, having to do with the somatics and the nervous system. Instead of asking, how do I calm this down? How about asking and experiencing, what is this energy protecting? What would support look like right now? Not control, but rather support. Because we're going right here at it. I mean, because it is my goal to support your 2026 kicking off in such a way that you, they, and them can maneuver and shift and move and be okay. Okay? And so we got to talk about regulation and unsafe systems, y'all. And if I might be more explicit here, you cannot regulate yourself into safety inside a harmful system. Whether we're talking about racism, economic instability, political violence, climate grief, collective loss, these are not internal problems with internal solutions, at least not all the time. You may be able to tease out a piece of that and work from there. But here's the deal. Sometimes regulation looks like setting limits or even creating a distance, leaving the spaces. Even sometimes it requires refusing normalization. Yeah, righteous indignation is what I'm talking about. And how about sometimes regulation looks like resting instead of pushing? Yeah, which can also be a form of resistance. And here's an invitation as well to consider, how about regulation can look like grieving instead of fixing and allowing the nervous system to slow down so that you can go fast. Capacity means knowing when your body is responding to current reality versus old trauma. Just saying, just putting it right there. I think it's important to know the difference. And here's an offering, a reflective invitation. What if your nervous system isn't behind? How about if your nervous system is simply honest? Consider that. What if your nervous system isn't behind? It's honest. Can you sit with that? Can you be with that? Because I want to speak a bit about what capacity actually means. Capacity means you can feel without collapsing. You can mobilize without losing yourself. You can pause without disappearing. You can stay connected without self-abandonment. This is not about being regulated all the time. Some of our genius actually comes to surface in the midst of our dysregulation. Feel some of that. It's about having enough internal permission to respond truthfully. And for many of us, this is going to require practice because systemically we have taught from safety protocols, especially those of us from marginalized communities. Safety is a true thing. And so we have been inundated, enculturated, acculturated, leading with this idea of safety. And so for many folks, this is actually going to take some time to arrive at these places that's going to provide health and wellness as an outcome for your system. And I'm talking about from a personal perspective, a developmental perspective, a collective perspective, a generational perspective, an ancestral perspective. Yeah. And I'm intentionally pausing to take that in for thine own self. If calm is not available, that doesn't mean healing isn't happening. It may mean your nervous system is refusing to lie. Remember, we talked about the sacredness of your nervous system. And I stand on that 10 toes down. Your nervous system knows stuff that you can't even remember, recall, identify, none of that. But you can absolutely feel it. You can absolutely sense it. You have an intuitive knowing that it's going down, it's happening, right? That's what I'm talking about. You are not meant to be serene in a burning house. Now, see, now I know I'm stepping on some toes here because, when we think about the dominant cultured normative and when we talk about this idea of marginalization, especially by race, right? When we start talking about indigenousness, indigenous folks, I'm sorry to tell you, they're different teachings. There are different knowings where indigenous folk have had to learn and both, and oftentimes for safety. It's inconclusive on the indigenous side because it continues to evolve and develop as we move into our sense of self, because so many of us have lived out here. It's not uncommon for indigenous folk, for Black, indigenous, persons of color, to not own ourselves because there has been systemic oppressions whereby there has been a macrotopic demand of conformity, which is often translated in the indigenous body as safety, unsafety. And so when we start to move in closer to the authenticity of ourselves with all the layers of who we are from the micro, starting with the sense of self, then starting to move concentrically outwardly in all the other layers, it can be a bit much and it can be overwhelming for the system. You are meant to have the capacity to move, to grieve, to resist, to protect, and to rest when possible. Regulation is not the absence of response, and nor has it ever been. Representation matters. It is the presence of choice. Stay with what's real. And David often says, David Grand, Dr. David Grand, founder and developer of Brainspotting, trust what you know. That is where healing lives. Thank you for being with me today. It is my hope, and I am holding with you and for you the best in all your days to come, even when it doesn't feel regulated, even when it doesn't feel good. There's something there on the other side if you can make it through the sadness and the grief, right? Because there's no way to even achieve restoration and or healing without going through sadness and or grief. So know that you're in good company. And I often encourage clinicians that sit with me for trainings and workshops and things of the like that we got to start encouraging ourselves and our clients that when you start coming to that precipice of restoration and healing, it can really push us back away from it because it can be so thick, it can be so heavy, right? It can be so rich, I like to say, and it can cause you to immobilize, to stop, because we just want the pain to stop, but just know that's a part of the continuum. And just know that it can feel scary. I want to name that in the space because so often we use these clinical terms and we give these interventions and worksheets and have these experiences in the therapy room. But just know the human in all of us, beyond any of that aforementioned, it can feel downright scary when your body begins to respond in such a highly astute, somatic way, and perhaps you're not prepared for it. Just know that's a part of the continuum. Just know that you're moving in the proper and correct direction. Beloved, it is always my pleasure. And until we meet again, I'm looking forward to our 2026 together. Please have wonderful moments day by day. Yeah? If today's episode resonated with your nervous system or your spirit, share it with someone who's still unlearning and reach out to me. My website is gracecommunitycounseling.com. You can reach me on Instagram at Monroy LPC. That is MONROY LPC. Also, I have offerings from retreats to brain spotting trainings to workshops, you name it. And I am also a speaker. So if you ever need a speaker with my skill set, look me up. Give me a call. Let's see what can happen. And absolutely for you clinicians and adjacent body healers, feel free to reach out and attend a brain spotting training. We have trainings all the time. Thank you.